Again, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, I have got this morning in the Bible study, I've got Jacob. And again, that comes from what we've been looking at in Hebrews chapter 11 through, again, faith and the faith that these men had. We've gone through many of them so far, and also with Sarah. And again, we come to the one person that I have, which is Jacob. There is a lot to Jacob. And I apologize if I'm not going to be able to get to everything. But he did live a very interesting life. And I think it can kind of parallel some of our lives and the things that we go through. I think that's a great thing about the Bible and the Old Testament and those examples of the things that we do learn about them and about God. And helps us in our faith today and to be able to grow our faith and such. So we're going to start, and again in Genesis. Basically Genesis 25. We'll be starting there and going through, Jacob is through chapters 25 through 35, and then a little bit more spotty in some spots. But anyway, that's kind of where we'll be going through, and I'll hopefully try not to jump around too much. Just as a little bit of an introduction, Jacob's life, it was marked with struggles, transformation, and then his faith. And it's just interesting to look at him. You know, he had, some people might say, a bit of a deceiver's heart when he was young. We'll look at that. And he had victories also. And again, as it parallels, I think, some of our lives, we have to look at that. One of the first things in the beginning, he, with his brother Esau. Again, I apologize, I'm not real good with Old Testament names, and I will probably struggle a little bit, so bear with me. And then also with, again, the birthright and with his father, and maybe deceiving his father in that. And then from those actions, he ended up fleeing for his life. And then he experienced some hardship of his own as he was away. But despite that, God, remained faithful to him, confirming the covenant through him. Again, the 12 tribes. I mean, it's an amazing story of all of it. Again, I think his life teaches us about that perseverance and sometimes maybe the consequences of our actions, but that God can actually transform any of us if we are willing. Again, he emerged as a man of faith, again laying the foundation for a great nation. And again, his story encourages us to trust God's process knowing that he can change anyone's destiny for his glory. So we need to, again, trust in God. So Jacob's birth, what's unique about his birth? Just one of the basic things. Exactly. His name, again, I'm not going to go into real deep detail, but he was obviously the second one born, but about him grabbing his brother's heel and his name coming from heel holder or supplanter. There's a lot of different things there, but just being able to do that. Let's go to Genesis 25 verses, I think, 22. Yeah, Genesis 25 verse 22. It says, "But the children struggled together within her, and she said, 'If all is well, why am I like this?' So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 'Two nations are in your womb, two people shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger.'" We need to remember this as we go through here, because it'll be interesting maybe to get your guys' thoughts on some of the things that I was thinking of as we go through this. Listening and hearing this, how did it steer Rebecca and her, the way the decisions that she made? And then also, as it goes on, but if we go to verse 28 in chapter 25, it says, "And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob." Another key point, I think, to remember, again, I don't want to get too into this because we want to stay with Jacob, but there's maybe some favoritism. And, I don't want to push too hard on it, but definitely we see this. We see it in Jacob's life and his siblings and stuff. And so it's nothing new. And so just a note I wanted to make is I think it's a great thing to look into farther at a later date maybe. And as parents, we must be very careful, because that can definitely help or hinder our children's lives, and especially we have more than one sibling, of them. So. As we go into this, when he was born, or they were born, there's the incident of the birthright. And some will say that Esau didn't value his birthright, and Jacob did value the birthright. Why did he value it? There's different things to think about there. Was it a selfish ambition, or did he truly understand what God had told Rebekah? Was that relayed onto him? Also the covenant, was that relayed to him in his decisions? We don't know for sure, at least my opinion, but I'll give him a little bit of leeway there. But he did have some tendencies, we'll say. Go ahead.
Jacob wanted to be an opportunist.
Yes. That's a good term for him. Okay. Very good. Yeah, opportunist. I've heard, there's been some other things thrown out. Some say he did a lot of trickery and things like that. Rich?
From what I understand about birthright, part of the privilege, if you will, of being the eldest and getting that blessing was that you were responsible for taking care of the family if something happened to the head
Yes.
of the house, like your siblings, your sisters. So you got a double portion of the inheritance, but then you were, responsible to
Right.
take care of the rest of the family, kind of. So that's the way I understand that.
And that gets me to take a step back and think, I would assume that both of these children understood to a point what that birthright was. That was very important. That was something that I'm sure was talked about and such. So it leads me to believe that Jacob was a bit more serious about that birthright and knowing maybe more of the responsibilities of it.
Yeah, it seemed to mean more to him.
Now, that develops as his life goes on, and actually he really comes into that responsibility, which is, it's great to see. It's great, a lot of things, becoming a new Christian. We don't know it all, have it all right then. But hopefully, with our growth of our faith and that, we grow into it stronger and stronger, and such, so.
That's right, a maturity process.
Right. And that's the whole thing we'll see with Jacob. It was, there's a whole maturity thing and with him. So he got the birthright from Esau. We'll go into then, from there, they've grown up some more, and Isaac's blessing.
John, before we go any more, I like
Yep,
one
sorry.
passage about Rebecca when she was told about the two
Mhm.
sons within her. She went to inquire of the Lord. She prayed unto the Lord, which is kind of never done before in the Old Testament, where a woman went and prayed. Later on, we have other women that have prayed to the Lord for guidance and help, but she didn't seem to be the very first to inquire of the Lord. Why am I having this problem,
Right.
this struggle within me?
No, good point. Yeah. It must have been difficult, and not knowing. I mean, yeah, I appreciate that point. Yes.
We sometimes focus on Jacob and how he was involved in this deception, but really Rebecca had a really good reason to want him to be the one looking after the family, because Esau had already married two women who the chapter 26,
Mhm.
verse 34 says verse 35, those two women he married brought grief to Isaac and Rebecca. So he'd already married 40 twice, and that was a strain on the family.
Oh, yes. And
The
that,
last thing she wanted was to have those involved.
a lot of things figure into Rebecca, and again, her involvement in, obviously she knew of what God had told her. That figured into it, I think. She, she loved Jacob very much. Wanted to see probably the best for him. So anyway, that was something. What's interesting in Genesis 27 and verse 11, or starting in verse 11, it says, "And Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, 'Look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing.'" So he questions his mom, and again, a lot of stuff about this and why did he go along with his mom, but again, at maybe the age he was and the time, I guess I'm going to cut him a little slack. Some people say, well, he was a deceiver and he just went right along with it. He could have disagreed and not done it. A lot of things there. I'm not going to second guess him. And we have our own things that weigh on us and different. Just in my own personal experience of physical family and ties and different things that could pull me away from God. we just have to be careful about how we think about that and being judgmental about that. We can judge Jacob very harshly on this, and why didn't he just decide to do what was right and not? But there's so much more involved there, and I see it in families, and I think you guys have too, in your physical blood relation family. Maybe if they're not all Christians, there's different poles and different things that can affect you and influence you and such. And so in this, my mom knows best, maybe, So anyway, that was an interesting point, I thought, of his growth in doing that. And obviously, there was a lot in it that Jacob had to do to be able to deceive his father, to be able to do this. But again, I wonder in the back of his mind about the knowledge he had about what was going to be coming forth. I guess over all of this, God knew what he was doing. It was God's plan, and he was going to make it happen no matter what, and that's part of it is. He uses us in the ways that, again, will fulfill his plan. So anyway, Jacob was blessed by Isaac, and that really upset somebody. Yeah, his brother. To the point that he was, after he mourned his father's death, he was going to kill him. And so obviously Rebekah found out about that and sent him away with his father's blessing to go to his, Rebekah's brother, I think it was, Laban, excuse me. Is that right? Yeah, Laban. Now, Jacob's dealings with Laban, also, there was some trickery involved that Laban did to Jacob, concerning Leah and Rachel. But so it kind of came back to him a bit, some of his stuff. So.
Yeah, John, what's interesting is we see a lot of family favoritism going on here. And later, Jacob is going to favor his sons, the younger sons, over the older, and that causes a lot of turmoil in the family. But we see where it comes from. It's already happening here.
Oh, yes, yes.
With him, and there's a lot of physical consequences that come along with that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big lessons from just the study of Jacob's life, through here is that of us as parents and children and such.
My dad would always tell us, kids, I love you all the same. I don't love one of you more than another, so there wasn't that turmoil between the siblings. He learned that from that.
Oh, yeah.
Member of the church.
So Jacob was sent to, again, Laban's household. And on his journey, I think Jacob had a life-changing experience. Let's go to Genesis 28 in verse 10, starting in verse 10. It says, Genesis 28, starting in verse 10. Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Now, I'm not sure if he put that under his head. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know, maybe that's not right, and I thought, man, what a tough guy. I couldn't do that, I don't think. But anyway. Then, And actually from there, could I get maybe two people to read 12 to 12 to 16 and then 17 through 22?
12 through 16?
Yes, please.
Sure. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will shall spread about to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. 16.
Yep, that's fine there. And then, I know, so I'd like to continue on from 17 to 22. Oh, go ahead.
And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on its top. And he called the name of that place Bethel. However, previously the name of the city had been Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take, and I will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I will return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone which I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that thou dost give me, I will surely give a tenth to thee.
So again, I think Jacob here, this really made an impression on him. I think it gave him strength to continue forward. He really is understanding now of his place. There's still, many more challenges and things ahead of him, but I think this is, I say, a boost in his faith for him. And I think we encounter those things in our life if our eyes are open and we're aware of it. I know I have. And when things are kind of down and, you've just been sent away from your family, you're all alone, and then you think, how could things get any worse, and such, and then, boom, God presents himself in whatever way it is and gives you that boost that you need. And I think that's what happened here.
John, I'll make a comment on that.
Sure.
I think the fact is, it's really interesting. God tends to plant a dream within your head and have a message for you, and then you can recall that dream. And we see that eventually in Joseph's life. He's able to put these dreams into people's heads, and it's like, that's not normal. I mean,
No.
and you think about, that's how he moved men in the Old Testament.
Oh, yeah.
Through this inspirational type of effort that he puts in people's head. Because this is the first time, I think, unless I'm wrong, the Lord kind of directly communicates to Jacob.
Right.
And gives him some information. It's always been to Isaac, and it's been to his father Abraham. But this seems to be the very first time. And then this is a good relationship that starts to begin between God and Jacob.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. This is a turning point, growth, big leap here. And I've seen it in myself, becoming a Christian and working kind of at it. But then there's a point at which that you realize that maybe I need to be more committed. I understand this more. I understand God more. And I think, like I said, he's reached that point now. And so in his decisions kind of going forward, you can kind of see some of this. He's not perfect. None of us are. But I think you can start seeing that, even that growth in his faith more and more in God and relying more and more on God. Rich?
What's interesting too, John, here is that God lets him see this vision in his dream, if you will, of this ladder that reaches all the way to heaven, and these angels ascending and descending. He gives him a glimpse of what's going on behind the scenes that we can't see. And so the heavenly realm is constantly in work. There's constantly angels ascending, descending. They're on missions with messages. They work in our lives. The Hebrew writer tells us in Hebrew 1 that the angels are for the ministering of the saints. That's us. And so
Yep.
It's amazing how the unseen realm we can't really see, but yet there's a lot going on
And we are so fortunate that we get to read about this and experience this way, where he was the only one that experienced this, you know, and so I'm sure that, you know, it was told to others and such, but it's, again, part of God's plan. Okay. Sorry if I'm missing anybody, but I'm trying not to. But so from here, he ends up going to Laban's household, and yeah, I just want to get ahead here. How long was he there in Laban's house? 7, 7, and 6. 7 for one wife, 7 for the other, and then 6 more until he finally decided that it was time to leave. I'm not going to get into the verses that say that, but it's in there. It's interesting that 20 years. I think that's quite a long time. That's a chunk of his life, young life. Again, just being married and such, that in dealing with his father-in-law and the things, there's a lot there. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there's a lot. And also, you know, what is it? There's 2 chapters just on Jacob's 2 wives and the maidservants. I'm not going to really go too much into that, other than there was a lot there that was going on, and with the seven sons, and that's a whole nother thing there. So anyway, I'm just going to mention that, and but through that, I think we can understand that Jacob truly, I think his what we'll call first love was, excuse me, Rachel, and again that whole sons from Rachel and favoritism and different things there. It kind of shows through in some of that. We can say that Jacob, while he was with his father-in-law, I think he learned a lot of his ability of being a herdsman and raising livestock and stuff in his younger years, and he refined that as he's working for his father-in-law, and to the point of where he very much benefited himself in being able to grow his own flocks and everything else, which drove a bit of a wedge, I think, between him and his father-in-law. But it wasn't anything that I saw that Jacob did wrong. He had his faith in God to help him to be able to grow and gain, and it just multiplied. And I think we can see that sometimes in our lives or other people's lives, that you just do, you know, you put your head down and just go and do the things that God wants you to do, and things just start happening, great things. And I think sometimes, you know, we forget about that you know, God will bless us, and we just need to keep our eyes on Him and focused on Him as we go forward. And I think he did. There was, again, a lot of different trials and things, and then when Jacob was leaving, you know, left with his family, Laban came, and, you know, Jacob told Laban the truth and exactly what was going on and what had happened. And so I think, you know, that was a good thing there that showed that Jacob had really grown. And again, he was, relying on God more and more to guide him through his life and again, through the faith that he had. So, yeah.
That's another thing we learned from these heroes of faith that we're looking at, is these men that put their total faith in God, like Abraham and now Isaac and now Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
We have Job, we have Noah. They were blessed. The Lord blessed the fruit of their hand, if you will, you know, whether it was flocks or whatever they
Oh, yeah. And again, if we don't see that blessing here on earth, we will see it in heaven. So, okay, so going forward, Jacob and his reconciliation with Esau. Very interesting. Obviously, his revenge and okay. Make sure I have enough time to finish this. So we'll just do with this. You can read it in Genesis 32, 6, 7, and 8. He was going to kill him, and that's why he fled. I'm sorry. I was referring to. Let me get to Genesis 32. There we go. Okay, this is when Jacob is there going to meet with Esau. We'll just start in chapter 32, verse 6. Then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying he had sent messengers out to see what Esau was coming with. We came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people and were with him and the flocks and the herds, camels, into 2 companies. And he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape. I'm going to stop there. Some people will say that, well, why is he afraid? Why is he not putting his faith in God at this point? I had to take a step back and not go down that road per se. What would I do? The last encounter I had with my brother was he's going to kill me. He's got 400 men. So maybe I need to kind of protect my family. If I know, the covenant, and trying to continue this. So I guess I'm a little less judgmental in Jacob at this point, thinking that what would I do in that situation? Is it a lack of faith? Or is it just looking at an alternative game plan than what actually, because we don't, he didn't know what the end result was going to be. So, and I think a lot of times we see this in our own lives. We think of all these different things that can happen, and those things hold us back. But then if we can push through it, and then it's this thing out of left field that God drops down and says, and it's like, whoa, I never thought that would happen. And that's what grows your faith, at least for me. Oops, sorry. And helps me to grow my faith. So in this, obviously, and then Jacob's prayer, which is great. He's relying on God, not trying to go on his own and do his own thing. And starting in verse 9 there in Genesis 32, then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children. For he said, I will surely treat you well and make your descendants as the sands of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. Wonderful to see him going to God into prayer. Great example for us in those times that we are not sure what the outcome is going to be. And again, I think it's another growth of his faith, showing that I am going to rely on God. Yes, I'm trying to protect and help my family, but yet he's still doing this. And then it comes to, he prepares a peace offering. I can't imagine. You read through that. It's amazing what he's offering to Esau, his brother. And then and 33, Genesis 33. Starting in verse 3, then he crossed over before them, this is Jacob, and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. I don't think Jacob even imagined that would be his encounter with his brother at that time. What an amazing thing. And again, just to strengthen him in his faith and such. So, there's the, let me get this right here. Myself out of. Now before that, he was, his encounter with God, with wrestling. How do you think that helped in Jacob in his mind in going forward? Any thoughts that you might have? I like that. I think he was given strength through that. Anything else? His brother definitely had definitely a change of heart. It's amazing what time heals. And again, you'll hear me always say it's in God's time, not our time. And I think that's a huge healer is time and being able to I guess help us to forget some of those things that has been so in the time. I'm going to jump forward just a little bit more. That means I've got about how much time? Okay. To Genesis 35. And this is Jacob returning to Bethel. And God said to Jacob, rise and go up to Bethel. This is in 35 verse 1. Dwell there and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau your brother. And Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves and change your garments. I think this shows us again of Jacob and now his leadership, and he's taken on that, again, that birthright as part of leading that family, leading extended family and all that. And he's, being the person to help them to draw closer to God, to be who they should be. And then again in verse 9, then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name. So he called his name Israel. Also God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you and to your descendants. After you I give this land. And God went up from him in the place where he had talked with him. Again, God reasserted that covenant. And at this point, I think Jacob, he knew what he needed to do. Again, his faith obviously was still growing, but he had grown so much. And I think, again, God gave him another boost, reminding him. And just, I think God continues to do that to us if we let him and open our hearts and our minds to him. I'll just wrap up a few things here. Just on Jacob's strengths, I think he was very persistent. Had to be in some of the situations that he was in. I think he was aware of his responsibilities spiritually and such, of what he needed to be doing. Through his time with Laban, he was, I think, a very strategic thinker in the way he was able to grow his flocks and all those things. And then again, his faith in God. It's amazing just to watch that growth through his life until the end. Again, through his prayers and such to God. Maybe a few of his weaknesses. Again, deception. Maybe he did some things that, like I said, he probably maybe shouldn't have done. He did actually have some partiality. Again, with his own son or sons and such with Joseph. He did have fear and anxiety, but I think we all have that at different times. But what do we do with it? And be able to trust in God. A few just important lessons. I think God can transform anyone, no matter what our flaws are. If we are willing to give our life over to God, trust in Him, have our faith in Him. Perseverance maybe pays off. I think if we're patient, and again in God's time. And then God's plan will always prevail. We have to remember that, not our plan. And then again, faith overcomes fear. Again, like Jacob, we may have weaknesses and face challenges, but through faith in God, we can reshape. He can reshape us into vessels for His glory. So, I thank you very much. And again, there is so much more. I encourage you to look at all those chapters about Jacob, and lots in there. So, thank you. Guess we'll have a 15-minute break.